Hello, everyone. Good morning. Today we are here for our third session, and we actually want to start by introducing the name for this sharing, which actually Nadia here, she had this beautiful merge of words that I find so suiting for this sharing of us. Nadia, do you want to share?
Good morning, namaste, everybody. I was having this inspiration because Salome always talks about podcasts. She loves podcasts in any form. So podcast, and then what we're doing, we're creating an alchemy. We are taking something and we're transforming, transmuting it. We're making gold out of stones. So Podalchemy, and because it's happening in the morning matinee. So we herewith introduce our Podalchemy matinees. Number 3.
Yes. Live from Lisbon here, and Nadia, she's live from Mandram, Goa. And curiously enough, during this week, one of it was Nadia's realization was about this um, importance of being aware of one's cultural conditioning and how when one is unaware of that influence, which can be good or bad, of the culture, one becomes a puppet in the under the strings of the cult, or which is actually something that a lot of spiritual seekers and whatnot, other people use it to actually refer to this collective shadow and also light that we are all eventually exposed to through our lives, but that differs from the point of the globe that we contact with. And I actually feel, Nadia, that you had a very good way of bringing up to consciousness. Would you like to share a little bit how that realization came? What did you go through in your process, and what was the trigger, if there was one, for that big haha moment?
Basically, a culture is often used as an excuse for a collective shadow. It is a behavioral structure which is done in the unconscious, and not people do not realize that they're actually following certain rules and regulations and unspoken contracts of a certain setting. It can be geographical, it can be religious, it can be groups of professional groups, it can be anything like that. So the cultural setting is something which is unconscious. And then if you are spending, that was something I'm referring to a lot about this, that splitting away of the cultural conditioning to actually go to the individuation of the soul, to peel away the conditionings to get to the actual person. But when you are, and that's what was my little epiphany this week, when you are in a place geographically, in a culture, in a cultural, so geographically defined cultural surrounding, with people who have not done the process of individuation, it can become very overwhelming, especially when you come from a different cultural conditioning. It can be very tedious. And then I had this epiphany that I loved always, even from an early childhood, definitely in my teenage years and early 20s, I loved to be spending time in cultural diversity. And the realization was the reason why I longed and seeked for this cultural diversity was because at least there's some mix. There's not just a collective conditioning, and we can redefine everything together. We can create a new culture together. So this whole expat lifestyles actually creates an opportunity to redefine one's culture and to create a new culture together, which of course again can become deeply conditioned. But for myself, it was a relief to not have to spend time within one prevalent cultural conditioning of that particular area. I always had a deep resistance to that. This was something I did subconsciously. The realization now is that it doesn't need to be cultural diversity. I just enjoy spending time with people who have individuated or are in the process of individuation. So they're not defined by their cultural background, geographical, cultural, ethnical, cultural background, or religious cultural background, or professional, whatever the setup is. So that's something which I've really realized this week, and that's something which in the monsoon times here in Goa, I'm very thrown back onto the cultural conditioning of one prevalent society, and that feels very overwhelming to the system. Whereas in season, there's a lot of influences from different areas coming in. So that is the epiphany I had, and also how strong this is in individuals, how strong and how unconscious this is in people, how much of their behavior is actually not individual choices, but based on what was learned and conditioned.
Yes, I find it very, very interesting because as I was growing up, I recall having this little inner voice always propelling me to go and study abroad. I had this, it was a fixation, it was like a compulsive thing of no, no, you need to study with people that are from different backgrounds and that think different and feel different. And I wanted to merge with that difference. And now, listening to your realization and your insight, I find that for the longest time, as I was growing up, I really felt apart from the norm, from the people that surrounded me and that were studying with me. At the time I was very young, but I've always had this inner feeling of not belonging, of feeling very inadequate, and that it was almost, I had like this private little world apart from the prevalent culture, but I would keep it to myself. And there was this voice telling me that, yeah, if I go abroad and if I merge with people that are different from my container, my cultural container, I could find these pearls of wisdom, and I could even like find myself. And now looking back, and I did have a lot of that experiences, but the first one that I did have around the age of 18 was pivotal to my process of individuation. At that time, it was not I was not aware of the spiritual individuation, so it was more of a rational kind of thing, but still it gave me a lot of insight about who I was apart from the apart from the country I was born in, and the values and the prevalent narrative. And I even feel that it was that very moment in time, by the age of 17, 18, that made me then always, once I would come back to my country after the studies, I would always feel that it's okay for me to be different, and it's okay for me to be kind of like outside the box in a way. It gave me the courage, the like the inner fire to, no matter what is happening, I could always go back to the default mode of knowing that there is a different rule and norm in other place of the globe. Yeah.
There's an extreme freedom about it, about going out of your setting. I'm from a small town. I'm from a small Swiss town. I'm a policeman's daughter, raised Catholic, quite religiously Catholic. So to be able, the first time I went out was going to London when I was 19, and that was just pure freedom. I could reinvent myself. I could reinvent myself, and I could just be moi. I could just be myself, or who I thought was myself. Of course, I still had a lot of these conditionings. So, and I still have to this day. It doesn't just go away. It's just this freedom of exploring different sides of you, of going out of it. And the dangerous thing about the culture is if it stays in the unconscious, that you're not actually aware that your behaviors are based on a deep, deep conditioning, which comes from your parents, but then school system is incredibly strong, you know, in infiltrating or conditioning you in a certain way, the values, what is important. And that gives an incredibly good base ground for manipulation later, because if you're unconscious, if you're fully aware that, okay, this is what I was raised at, and that's something which has been developed due to my background, but you're aware of it, you haven't got such a hook on that. And it's just so that I share that totally with you. Like, I was so happy if I could go abroad, especially in the Anglo-Saxon culture back then. I chose to go to London, you chose to go to the States. Was that already the States back then, or no, it wasn't yet?
It was Oxford. It
Ah,
was also
it was also England, yes.
it was
But
also
later it was the States for you, right? So this, and then Spain as well. So this possibility to go out of your setting. And actually, funnily enough, I feel that Portuguese people and Swiss people have, in a way, certain things in common, because it's both small countries. One is rich and the other one is less rich. But it's this
Or
there's this thing for you, let's call the child by its name, no?
yeah.
So the thing is that this desire to be seen as well and to belong to something cooler than we are. I'm not sure, but I've seen that in you, and I've seen it in a couple of other Portuguese people. There's not such an immense national pride. This is kind of, oh wow, you know, Spain is bigger, better, whatever. So there's this, and Switzerland has always got this inferiority thing with Germany. So I think that we share that, and then to go to another place to reinvent ourselves, to get those chains off us and actually live our ego as well, you know. But but that is such a freedom, and that was in a very early age, so we were not aware of it. Now we just felt the freedom of it. The culture is not just where you come from in a country. It can also be, then you can also create a subculture, you know, with a group of people can create a new culture together. But basically, in my personal opinion, a culture of any kind, subculture, in whatever way, is shadow which gets explained away with culture. And we had this discussion, no, about the shadow or not shadow. For example, about the culture, when we talk about art and beautiful architecture, heritage, that is seen, no? It's not hidden, so it's not a shadow. It's something which is beautiful, which is celebrated, which is not a shadow. Shadow is what is not seen, what is hidden, the behaviors, the structural things. And it's really, really strong. And in India, it's incredibly strong. And I feel it's 180 degrees opposite of my social conditioning, of my cultural conditioning. 180 degrees. Which makes it sometimes a real stretch to be in a setting which is not multicultural, but to be totally inundated and totally swimming in that other culture. It's very, very, very different. what the values, what is important, what is not important, how one goes about life, and how one distracts oneself. It's very, very, very different. And to be in a totally different culture helps to see one's own conditioning if you want to.
Mhm. And I feel like, especially after what you said, like the fact that there is such a stark contrast between your social conditioning and then where you're now where you're now building your life. But the fact that you're an outsider, an observer looking at the social culture that is 180 degrees from your 180 degrees different from your social condition, so that magnifies the clashes, because it's like I would feel that to your brain, or even like to the unconscious or subconscious, you're like there's a pull to go back to the familiar. Then you have the observer that you're looking at 108, like the opposite of the familiar, and you're, because you're inserted in that culture, you need to comply, let's see, with some norms, let's say. But then you also understand that there is a different possibility, there is a possibility for something um structurally opposite to it, and that you see that to some degree it functions with also its own loopholes. You understand what I just said? Or...
I understand totally what you say, but I think what's a really, I mean, first of all, you refer to me. You also experienced that cultural difference. So,
Oh, we can go actually. We can dive into that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, but yeah, just quickly, the thing is about what I just wanted to say before, like in my personal case, it was also that I denied everything about being Swiss. I rejected everything about being Swiss. I rejected this overly structuredness, this, there's a certain coldness about it. There's a certain matter of factness about it. There's zero drama, there's zero fluff stuff. There's also very little beauty. There's also very little creativity. There's very little room for creativity. So I rejected my own inner Swiss. And that can also, there's also this cultural shadow that there's not just racism, like in the negative racism, there's also positive racism. So there was a period in my life where I thought every single nation on planet Earth is better than the Swiss one, So, and then it takes to be in another culture to realize every culture, when it's lived without discernment, has a very, very toxic side to it, every single culture. If it's lived with discernment and you still manage to do this inner individuation as a soul, apart from where you're born in what setting you're born in, it's a different story. But if you just follow that, it's toxic. It doesn't matter if it's whatever culture it is. So, and your Indian experience, you just referred to me, but you had also quite an experience.
I did, but I refer to you because in my eyes, the Indian culture, especially in Goa, is not the stark opposite to the Portuguese. And actually, what I did find was that a lot of sometimes how do you say, the vicious, not the so nice traits of the Indian culture in Goa were imported by the Portuguese. So I was not triggered by them, but I can say, for example, that there is this in Goa, like it's a sunny kind of like a region in India, and there is this laziness that I have also seen in Portugal. Laziness, as in, um, I'm not going to go the extra mile if I can pass by life doing the bare minimum. And this I associated a lot with my own culture, and it's something that I've always judged in my culture, and I tried to be different, but also knowing that from the sidelines I also have that trait. That one, also the lack of punctuality. I also see it was kind of like imported from the Portuguese, and I don't know. I'm not familiar with the rest, the Indian culture as a whole, because my experience with India was limited to mostly Goa. I've been in other places like Rishikesh and Dharamshala, but for not enough time to immerse myself in the culture so that I can analyze it and I can understand what the real values are. For that, I want to have a proper immersion. But with regards to Goa, that I can say that there are some points that I've seen that they were coming from the Portuguese, and these ones I was not in stark clash with, but then there were ones that really made it like really hardened the experience for me. And in my aspect, in my particular experience, I feel that one that was throwing me off balance a lot was the um, outer disorganization. Like I am not a very organized person, but in Portugal, there is certain structure to things, and I realized that it gave me a lot of comfort and this inner feeling of safeness. And when I went to India, and I've seen like this, to me it was a jungle, outward jungle, in regards to like administrative process, like this administrative processes, things that I needed at the time for example, in my case, I was thinking if I wanted to start my profession there, and it was so impossible for me to kind of like find the ropes of the system, and so not having this system of rules implemented and the places where I needed to go took me away from my center. And I do feel I came into contact with a big shadow. Now I'm not sure if it's me or if there's a collective shadow of the Portuguese, but which or to me it's even generational, which is the lack of resourcefulness. I don't feel it's a shadow of Portuguese, it's actually a shadow of my generation, my particular generation. It's like if plan A does not function, what do I do? What do I do? And I recall actually vividly that this was one of our clashes in a way, and it was you that draw me attention to, look, this is not normal. You need to look deeper into that, right?
But the plan B is also very Indian.
They actually do. It's
There
true.
is like, and it is a generational thing. We can also go in this generation, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen, what is it called? You know better, the millennia, Gen Y or something, no?
Now, yes. Then you have the Z after
And
the millennium.
I
Mhm.
said, I think I'm X or some, whatever. So there's also certain personality traits, which goes again to the astrology, because there's certain generational alignments in the stars which correlate and which are then only playing out, of course, when the generation comes of age and you actually see them interacting society. You do not really see a generational pattern with the children because they're just not exposed enough in public view. That's also culture. It's also a form of culture. It's like the identification with something, and that can also become an excuse, which of course also in that case is also the way they grew up, the way the circumstances were, like it's a computerization, right? So we still had to go and do things manually, whereas you could solve it from the computer. And if that computer power is not there, how to solve it manually? You know, that's this resourcefulness. And it's
Yes,
also done strategically to take that away. this cultural thing is a very tricky one. It's also the over-identification or the total rejection of it. It is, we are, that's the lens again. You know, how do you look through the world? It's on which frequency you're talking about. In the end of the day, we are just human beings having this experience, this Earth University experience. And it doesn't matter which country we are from, it doesn't matter which religion we are from, what our background is. The important thing is that we realize that this is just a facade. This is just part of our conditioning, like all these wars and everything. And then they're taking sides and blaming. Let's get very specific. You know, this whole war now in Jerusalem, yeah, in Israel and Palestine. How can you collectively condemn the Jews? How can you collectively condemn Islam? How can you collectively? This is like groups, but within these groups, or like within these groups, there is individuals. There, everybody has their story. Everybody has their own personal, individuated core, and it's not because I'm Swiss. I'm like my neighbor in Switzerland. We can define via it, but it's such a huge big veil. It's such a huge big putting things into boxes and making it more manageable in the world. It is, we're not going to get anywhere when we you know, there's this thing that I have personally, I find it very hard to, I'm at this point at the moment where I'm triggered when people say, oh, that's my culture, you know, that's who I am. No, that's not who you are. That's what your culture is. You know, there's more to it. And that causes a lot of conflict.
True. It's true. I want to touch upon 2 points that you raised there that I feel are very, very very important. First, like with these things of, you know, the big events and then the projection that happens in these big clashes, like conflicts playing out, like the current one, the Israel and Palestine, and how much emotion, like unruled and ungoverned emotion, is projected onto a different country and culture, and almost like this judgment, when essentially, like, first, on the first, like, most superficial plane, how is it possible to even like judge someone's country, when most likely, the truth to be told, the people in it have no control whatsoever of the decisions that get made in the political realm.
No.
And that, even if we consider that the politicians are the the masters of it all, that I feel this is one of big revelations to humanity. Sooner or later it will come out, but it's not even that happening. And there are extremely there are experts in this field, and there are a lot of information for those that want to find it out. But so for me, just to understand that, how do we project so much hate and judgment and intolerance, really, onto a like a population, just because of decisions that are not even theirs, in their plane of control to begin with. That, to me, it really animates me, because it's something that I intellectually I cannot understand, and even like through the heart I also cannot understand. And then this second point, of the trigger of, yes, I also feel like a lot of people use it as an excuse. They use the culture as an excuse for aspects of their personality or aspects of the conditioning. It's not even there to begin with, but because there is this lack of curiosity to go within to understand, hmm, where does this belief that, for example, men are that women are less able to choose than men or less worthy than men. Where does this come from?
Oh yeah,
Does the
we have the conditioning of the male and the female too.
Exactly. Where the but for example, in India, I do feel that the social role of women is still not the same as men, and there's still a lot of things to be maybe looked at from that particular angle. And so, but for example, if you start to see the to see the behaviors of women and around men, you, as of course a Western woman, you can judge. I mean, you get triggered. It's a natural response because you know that in your own country there's no longer that same behavior. But also I feel that it's also important, instead of sometimes like judging, also realizing, okay, why is this happening? And even be that spark in other person's life, just to kind of like pierce the veil. And coming from a place of detachment, judgment, if that exists, kind of like understanding, but also kind of like pointing, maybe like question this, question, start to see that this does not have to be the rule. But from the other position, I feel that sometimes when the person is so self-absorbed in the culture, there's not this distance to even being able to receive that comment with curiosity, with openness to inquire. And I feel that both me and you, we do have that openness to inquire when someone trigger us in an aspect, or like when someone says something, but this does not need to be this way. And I feel it's a beautiful quality to start the inner work.
It's a very beautiful quality. And you know, the thing is also how you can feel yourself. I live here now for 4 years, and certain things which were like a total shock to my system, especially in connection to man-woman relationship. One of the things that really shocked me in the beginning was that when man and when a in the Hindu culture, apart from a small part in northeast India, the women move into the house of the husband, you know, with the mother-in-law, and this is big. It gets played out in a Bollywood films all the time. It's a very prevalent topic because, of course, it's the mother-in-law, daughter-in-law dynamic that can cause friction. So there is this, which was total shock to me. How is this happening? So now I'm here for years, and I had this specific example that somebody raised that with me, like, oh my God, this is so weird. And I go like, well, it's normal. You know, it's like how you feel. Even I would never want to do that. And I think it's so wrong. I do. Still, it doesn't feel alien to me anymore. I think but it's so wrong. Like it's so wrong in the sense of the way it's done, but also like there's economical reasons behind it. The more together, you know, that you, and it's also how to keep because it gets passed down the property on the man's lineage. So the son stays in the house and then the wife comes in there. So there's many reasons which make intellectually sense. But it just felt so wrong for me when I came here. From a woman empowering point of view. And now it almost feels normal. So this is also the danger, that when you go into a culture that, you know, like daily, it becomes a normality. And that's happening with a lot of the brainwashings as well, that when you try to bring some new dogma, some new rules into a society, you just have to little droplets, and then it becomes normalized until you don't realize anymore that it's actually not normal at all, you know? So I don't want to say now what's normal, what's not normal in that, but I just realized it in myself that certain things were feeling very alien, and now it's just the way it is, and it doesn't feel so alien anymore, which doesn't mean it's what I would want for myself. And there's also what's happening in countries like India. There's a huge, big national pride about being Indian, which gets very much stirred up by the central government as well. This is huge, coming especially from North India, from the Hindu culture, from the Hindi-speaking culture, less from the South. And there's so much national pride coming up that there is a certain we do it the right way attitude, and the defensiveness towards any kind of influence which comes from outside as well. And some people have never been exposed in the villages to any kind of non-Indian news broadcasting. So they do not actually know that there is a different way of living. They've never had the perspective of choosing a different lifestyle, which is changing now a bit with the internet, but still then there's a language barrier. You know, if you do not speak a foreign language and the letters are different, you cannot actually read what's in the Western net.
Mm-hmm.
So this isolation, of course, also creates this stagnation, this fundamentalism in a culture. And it's tricky because the globalization is not the solution either. It's just a total different culture, which has, again, a different rule, which is also collective then. It's not about globalization, isolation, whatever. It's about finding your own inner personal nature, devoid of any upbringing from your parents, what your parents said to you, what's good and what's bad, any value system, from your school system. If you were in crash, from your family, from your neighborhood, which neighborhood you grew in, which defines you in future. In certain countries, when you grew up in the wrong neighborhood, your participation in society is very limited. So all these conditionings, if we go into this individualization, we cannot be manipulated as well, and we cannot rely on a value. We have to think for ourselves. We have to discern. We have to find our own way, because as soon as you seek the safety of a group, an unconscious group, where you're not questioning things, there will be a new subculture with a new conditioning system.
And blind spots.
And the blind spots that go with it. So that's it's a very deep topic, and it's a politically very tricky topic to talk about it.
Oh, yes, it's a very
I feel how I'm censoring myself talking. I can
Me
feel
too.
how I'm censoring myself, because when I speak to you alone, I speak differently. I can feel how I do it, and it's also a conditioning that we know that, you know, like there's a thing is by saying but there's certain terminologies that you give people when they do say certain things that shuts people up. You do not want to be a certain way, so that keeps people shut. You know, if you start to question things, you're being called something you don't want to be called. If you question, for example, I was on a forum and I said I didn't agree with what one of the participants wrote, and I stated that, and then the answer was that I'm an anti-Semite. And I'm like, I didn't even know this person was Jewish. So, you know, there's this throwing of attacking and immediately putting you in a box so you won't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with your conspiracy theorist.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be a conspiracy theorist, or when you say something, these titles, you know, to shut you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I also feel it's one of the armors of the society. And now we are entering a tricky field, because I really feel very strongly, and I was born in the 90s, 1995, and I know this. I actually, it's not even something that I think, but there was more tolerance. There was more in, and I even believe that Nadia has experienced much more freedom than I I did in the 90s, right? Or,
Much more.
but I do feel that we are like the freedom really is one of those values that has been compromised in this w- wanting and longingness to be correct, to be politically correct, to be religiously correct, to comply with some box and structure and limitation, self-imposed limitation. And what I do feel very strongly, and actually I feel it's the perfect moment to, because this to me represents the era of Capricorn, and we were in this era, the era of limitation, of social compliance, of fitting into the box, of don't wanting to draw the lines past that, of censoring ourselves, of hiding and seek because we cannot be judged, and we as a collective. But of course, there are players that advocate for this. Um, we want to to blend in, and in that blendness, we go, give away unwillingly our freedom to be, our freedom to be. It's not even to think; it's to be. And to me, that is one of those things that I feel very strongly it will change with now Pluto entering in Aquarius. I am already feeling that there are boundless limitations that will be carved out. Of course, I also feel this is a process, and I tend to be very optimistic. I have my feet sometimes in the future, both of my feet, and the only the body is in the present. That's why I also feel that it's very important to have these conversations, and to even explain to people, and opening, sharing a little bit, like also the inner resistance that exists, and I'm experiencing it in this conversation, because it's more of a political sensitive topic. It's almost as if I'm not able to show myself as I am, as, and I'm not able to voice what I think and what I feel, not wanting to also make a persona that, and even express myself in a way that I know the absolute right and wrong. No, it's not about that. I'm sharing my lens of the world, but I am not doing that freely, because there's some limitation that I sense. It's not someone censoring myself here, putting a gun against my head, but it's here.
So
It's in.
beautiful. Oh my God, it's so beautiful. You're touching on the most important thing, I think, of this talk today, because we feel in the West we are free,
Mm.
and we are not.
Yeah, it's a big illusion. Talk about it, Tanya, please go.
It's not, especially they take you in this wanting to fit in, you know, you want to belong, you do not want to stick out, and even you get put into a category of people, maybe by saying something that you do not actually per se identify with.
Mhm.
A very good example, and this is going to step on some people's toes. I strongly believe that abortion is murder.
Mhm.
I do not agree with dogmatic religion. I do believe in, I strongly advocate against rape. All these different. So if I say I believe abortion is murder, because to me there's already a being. It's already a being whose life gets terminated.
Mm-hmm.
That is something which is advocated by a group of people that I cannot relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So my reasons to feel that way come from a different realm. It comes from a place of knowing that it is something that the woman will never really, it's not something a woman can really digest. It's something that is really weighing very heavy on somebody's soul. It's not about, when you go into this is my body, my choice. My choice stops when there's another body involved. I feel very strongly about that. And I'm very willing to debate about it, but it's politically so incorrect because I do not relate to the dogmatic religious side because it's not done by society and you cannot do it and whatever. I have the same opinion, but for very different reasons. But then I get put into a corner and being called a certain things that I cannot relate to. And sometimes this corner might be unsafe in certain cultures, that you actually get hunted down, that you are, it can be life-threatening in certain cultures. It's not officially life-threatening in the West, but it's highly stigmatized and totally unpopular opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I do know many people who think that way, but would never voice it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some more opinions that it's something that are not voiced publicly. I'm not condemning anybody. I feel compassion. I'm not condemning. I'm feeling pain about the situation and the background of why abortion is being pushed so much. There is also a background story behind it, which I reject. So these things are very, very, very important. And when you choose to live a life outside of a box, it can become quite hard because you step on so many people's toes. One time you step on this box's toe, the next time you step on that box's toe, and you never really belong. So you have to align within yourself. You have to align within your own deepest inner discernment. And that might also change with growth. But the only way we are empowered, the only way we have control over ourselves is by aligning with ourselves in connection with God, the divine, the universe, the highest power source. And the divine laws are not like the natural laws. The natural laws are man-made. And they do, because you have this very strong sense of justice. Also from your professional background, that's why you went into your profession in the first place. What is truly just is not always what's the verdict in court.
Mm-hmm.
So you have this dilemma, you have experienced this dilemma a lot in your professional vocation that you initially chose for the reason of doing justice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is something that I'm still integrating. I still feel there are deeper layers to what I fully know or fully am conscious of. But what I do know is, for me, justice is one of my core values. To me, also not a coincidence that I'm a Libra. Funny enough. And I have North Node in Libra, but justice, fairness really play a pivotal role in my life and what I embody. And so when I was um, forced to make a decision, because for the longest time, and I had this very deep intuition that I was not ready to make a decision when it came to, again, complying with the status quo of I have to choose a profession by the age of 18. I felt very deeply, very strongly that I was not ready to choose. Yet, if I connected, I felt that okay, from the possibilities that I do have, then law would be the best fit. But I knew it was not 100% aligned. I had this intuition, but I could not understand, and so I decided to pursue law. And I loved, because I'm very curious. I really have this student archetype very strongly within me. So I loved the course. I felt it was so beautiful to understand the rules, the law, like how the ideal world would operate.
Mm.
And then I came into the profession, and it was 180 degrees from what I idealized in my mind, from even like the application of the rules, how it was so corrupt from within, how things did not work properly, and how me being a lawyer, I would have to comply with the system, or i I could not be a lawyer. I deeply felt a big dissonance between my being, what I embodied, and justice and fairness, and what I wanted to do with the profession, and what I was able to to do if I was a lawyer. And it was one of those striptease moments of my life where I realized that I have to, in order to honor my being, myself, I have to take a step back, and I have to recalculate the route, and I have to give myself the time, the energy, the permission, the resources to step outside the boxes of society and
Mm.
ascertain what makes sense, what is aligned with my being. Um, yeah.
And that really helps when you go to a totally different culture,
Mhm.
professional culture, because the lawyer guild is also something which has its own subculture, no? They have certain ways of doing things, there's a dynamic. And then also your physical culture, like your national culture. And to come to India, it gave you also what usually happens when you step out of your comfort zone, not traveling with people, not traveling with your partner or your friends, but going by yourself, because like that you are forced to meet new people, make new acquaintances, get confronted with new ideas, mindsets, and different ways of doing things. And that opens generally the mind. And when you actually go and step out of that, that gives you certain, or can maybe give you first confusion, but eventually more clarity.
I have two things that I really need to say. I feel they are going to be very important. There are two things of my Indian experience that were like aha moments for me. Well, the first realization that I did get when I started to go through this very deep inner process was that I was the fact that I was a lawyer, instead of making me instead of making me free, was um, coercing me from within. There was like this self-censorship, big one. I would not allow myself, for example, to be in this podcast, to be as raw and honest if I was still a practicing lawyer. It was not possible for me. And I feel very strongly about this. I know so. And I even know that if I was still a lawyer, I would get like this fear of I'm going to be disbarred any moment whatsoever. So this is the first layer that I actually want to touch upon, because I really feel very strongly about this, that our overly identification with what we do in our profession, instead of being a freedom, it coerces us from within, and it censors us. And so we are not so much in this, there is a price to be paid to be in a certain bar, to be part of a certain member group of people, collectively. There is a price, and it's a very high one. And where it drains us and coerces us is from freedom. It takes away the freedom. If you want to be a lawyer, you have to give that freedom away. If you want to be a doctor, you have to renounce your freedom. And this I really feel very strongly about. We don't need to give away our freedom. We are born free beings, sovereign beings.
And we
This
again, in this thing, in the West, we have it too, because of this guilt, because of this belongings to certain groups. We don't have official press censorship, but we do have, because it just doesn't come out. There's no way, there's just one agency, whatever. That's a different conversation altogether. But you're being tongue-tied by the inner need to belong.
Yes, and this was a big core wound that I had. Yes, I felt that in order to be safe, I needed to belong. And I really had also like this big fear of judgment. I don't even know if it comes from this life, other lives, but what I do know is like it's like my life depended on me not drawing out of the lines of society. Me showing myself from who I am is dangerous. I really had this very deep ingrained within me.
And that's how they keep us quiet.
Yeah.
It's manipulation.
Yeah, but we don't see it. I could never have this conversation with you 2 years ago. It was not possible. And I would say to you, stupid, like naively enough, that I was so free. And it's funny how when you're so immersed in that world of normalcy, you don't see how how you are giving away the most precious thing about your life.
Freedom.
The freedom to be who you are, to express
Yes.
yourself in every way you want. Yeah, and so this was
Aligned with divine laws.
exactly. And this is yes, and this is also where I feel then a lot of the discourse comes from. Then yeah, but you cannot be free because then anarchy or like crimes. No, because what we are advocating for is freedom in alignment. And
that's another very important point. It's also that it often gets used. Again, we are with the word. Who of us wants to be called, especially the compassionate and empathetic ones of us, wants to be called irresponsible and egoistic? It's gaslighting, it's manipulation. If somebody is following the path of individuation and filling their own vessel first, to not be totally depleted, and to actually put different glasses on and to start seeing the world in a different way, and rebelling and refusing to participate in certain deeply conditioned rituals, dynamics, this person will be called by the peers, by the family. Very likely that person will be called irresponsible for not taking the duties, and will be called egoistic, very likely. And that is another thing that people don't want to hear. That's another thing that is a deep manipulation, a deep toxic gaslighting. And I have that a lot with my clients, you know, when especially women start to because I mostly work with women, start to explore their ways, the family refers to them as irresponsible. And nobody wants to be that way. So you get them back into loyalty, check. So to do what is aligned is not being egoistic. But to do just what you want to do from an ego place without alignment with the divine, that is egoistic. That is entitlement. And that's a huge difference. It's a huge difference if you're following your own path of truth and what your true inner calling is, which of course you have to discern as well, and it's a process. It's a huge difference, or if you're just an entitled human being who walks the planet and thinking you own everything and everybody owes you something. That's a huge difference. And it's usually not the same people.
Mm-mm.
So again, we're using certain words that people don't want to hear. We use them as a manipulation.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I do feel that the more we are in the inner process, the more we understand how nuanced like realities and things that we would not necessarily see as for example me very, to be completely honest, like I I've never, even before entering the deep inner process, I've always felt that I was never gaslighted before, and that I was never manipulated, and that I was like in control, but there was so much naivety, just because I was really leading a life um, of shadows, like really responding to the shadows that I've seen in the wall. It was not, I was not, I was not, I was not in my power, and I was not questioning things, and I was not allowing myself the time to really and this, like, because discernment takes time. It's a process, and it's not a one, like I take one pill and suddenly I am enlightened and I am in alignment and I am in discernment. No, no, it's a very deep process, and I really feel that most people don't give, because they're following the rule, the societal norm, the I need to be I need to be in the hustle culture. I need to be millionaire by 30. I need to have a family by this, like these deadlines, and this really confuses people and prevents them to question and inquire. And this answering this call can be made at any point in our lives. We can be almost almost going to the grave and have this moment of, wait, stop, I'm going to stop
It's
and
never
be
too
able,
late.
never too late, I'm going to stop and inquire everything, and I can have like all these ties, and no matter what, I'm going to be honest and true to myself, and really question.
And the thing which I find is very interesting, because it just comes up, I don't know if you heard before that loud music at the background. Maybe it doesn't show, there's incredibly loud music outside. And we have some other festival tomorrow. I've lost track. So that just came up because every culture has also their system of keeping people occupied.
The distractions.
So because let's just call the child by its name, cultures have also been developed and put into boxes to control people, because people who are individuated are not controllable, and it's not interesting for the elites. It's not interesting to have a bunch of individuated human beings on this planet, because they will just not listen to what you have to do. And so some certain individuals will not be able to get as rich, because we will just cut through the bullshit. So there is different systems in every culture to keep you entertained. Like because the Indian culture is so, it's just a shock to me how every festival can last for days. Like Ganesh festival is 11 days of fireworks and boom, 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 boom. Initially it was very beautiful and very spiritual, but then it became more and more like a party happening with fireworks, with boom boxes on a rickshaws, these little mini trucks, and other and that's the thing, and the wedding, they last for days. So with pujas and weddings and funerals and childbirths and baptism, you're literally busy the whole year. And then you throw in some sugar into the food that keeps people subdued. In the West, it's more the manipulation. Here's manipulation through the family and the religion. So there's all these pujas. Pujas are religious ceremonies, but they're not just 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. They last 4 days and they're the full year long. People do not get done anything. You just do never have the chance to really get things done, because there's always some wedding, some puja, some funeral, which also lasts for days. So everything is lasting a long time. And the families are very big, so you have to go 600 people to a wedding. So you're constantly on some wedding.
And the birthdays, no?
Yes,
Also.
and then the birthdays, and you're constantly busy with family happenings and religious happenings, which leaves you so little space for individuation, because you're constantly in this. You also need to do some work. You also need to get other things done. So you are occupied. In the old Rome, they made these colosseums and these circuses to keep the people occupied. Every culture has a different thing. In the West, it's football. You know, like a European championship, a world championship keeps the masses busy. There's no plotting happening during those times, I'm sure, revolutionary plottings, because everybody is busy with that and wants to participate. So there's these group happenings which last for many days or over weeks and months, which gets these people in a mass hype, which, you know, you kind of throw certain morsels to the people to keep them busy, occupied, and seemingly happy, so they won't actually rebel, and they won't have time to individuate. They won't have time to do the meditation. They don't have time to query things. They don't have time to read good books, to get a good night's sleep, which is very important to have a certain rhythm in life. So and then with the food, of course, here it's like a lot of sugar, but people still eat a lot at home. In the West, it's just junk food. And it's all these things that every society also has different things to keep it undercover. So when you go when you start to explore spirituality and you want to actually enter a spiritual journey, many want to participate fully still in this matrix life, I call it. But they want to do the spiritual thing as well. Honest, it's not possible. You have to commit. You cannot be drawn to all this in the West, all the Christmas, New Year thing. The whole thing needs to be done. All the, all this dictatorship of, and it's not just the actual Christmas, it's the whole preparation, the buying the presents, and everything is focused on that. And the New Year, and you have to do this and you have to do that, and the children need the present. So important that everybody has presents and the right present. And then there's so much cultural pressure around Christmas. And then is in the West, this entitlement, I don't know about Portugal, but in Switzerland, Germany, Scandinavia, Benelux countries, that annual 1, 2, 3, 4 holidays, it is almost like if you didn't go far away on holiday, it means you're not participating in life. You are not actually, it's the same as if an Indian person would say, I don't have to eat tomorrow. I cannot go on holiday. So this cultural, you need the children, as a parent, the children need to go to school and tell that to the school. Otherwise, how will they be compared to the peers and all these pressures of, my children, and then how are the other children going to react? It's all these brands you need to wear. All those things.
The house, the vacation. Yeah, there's all these social
Keep you
narratives.
busy. In the West, it's more that, because you need to generate a lot of money to keep all this. And here it's more the family involvement with this constant celebration of constant things. you know, the West actual Christmas is not very long, but you need to have this exorbitant presence, you know, you need to, there's more and more people who don't, but it is originally, or not originally, but it has become like that quite a bit. So there's all this, which keeps you busy with something that you cannot actually focus on what is the essence. And the essence, the true essence is, as many of us to find the path of individuation, so we can strip ourselves from these conditionings and actually discover who we are and discover what our God-given gift is, and use this and gift this gift to the world, because that's what we are born for. We are born to live what the gift with the gift that we were given, and it takes time to discover that. It takes time, it takes silence, it takes a separation from certain things to be able to do that. So, Salome, you want to wrap up?
Yeah, I feel like it's the right message also to wrap up. It's yes, it's finishing up with this call really to go inwards, to allow oneself, if you feel like this questioning boiling from within, like to allow yourself to really question your values. Are they coming from you, or are they coming from the culture you were inserted in for the longest time? Or is that is that is what you are doing, are you really following, leading your life from animated from your inner realm, with your inner compass and values? And really, are you honoring that gift that you were God given, and that is so yours, and it's so uniquely yours? I really feel very strongly that, and I knew this. It's funny. It's just I when I was a child, and I remember vividly like writing about those things, that I knew that each human that walks the earth, um each has their own it's unique, and it's not possible to be replaced, and has like this inner spark that is so individual. And that is what really is important to follow throughout one's life, through the ups and downs, because that spark, that uniqueness, will animate you, and it will make you go through the different seasons of life, the ups and downs, the pain and suffer, but it will be that spark that will give meaning to the lows.
Beautiful. And what happens as a child when you're born, you actually remember. There is
Mm.
remembrance of your soul purpose, which we forget when we grow up. So what you've experienced as a child is you still knew,
Mhm.
and then you started to forget. And now, with your Saturn return, you're
Yeah,
remembering again.
exactly. And I feel it's time to
Yes.
wrap up our third session. Thank you for listening, for tuning in, and
Namaste.
until next week.